Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about adding and subtracting fractions. Let's dive in. So when adding and subtracting fractions, you want to first see if you can reduce either fraction, as that may make your life easier. Then you look for a least common multiple of the denominators. You multiply the numerator and denominator by the factor that creates that common denominator. And then you may have to multiply both fractions, just so you know. And then you add or subtract the fractions once you have that common denominator. So let's take a look at this first one. I'm first checking if either of these I can reduce. I cannot, so I'm now looking for a least common multiple of the denominators. So I know that this denominator is 10, this one is 5, and I notice that that least common multiple would be 10. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 in order to get to that denominator of 10. So I multiply the numerator and the denominator by 2. So 2 times 4 is 8, 2 times 5 is 10, so I have 8 tenths plus negative 1 tenth. Now that's really just adding 8 plus negative 1, which is 7, so our solution is 7 tenths. So 4/5 plus negative 1 tenth is 7 tenths. So now we have number 2, negative 1/4 minus 1 tenth. I'm looking at these denominators and I know that a least common multiple of them is 20. So in order to get the negative 1/4 to a 20, I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 5. So I get negative 5/20ths. And now I'm going to multiply the numerator and denominator of this 1/10 by 2. And that's going to become minus 2/20ths. And negative 5 minus positive 2 is a negative 7/20ths. So negative 7/20ths is our answer to number 2. And now number 3 is saying negative 1/2 minus 1/4. Again, the least common multiple would be 4. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. 1 times 2 is 2, so we have a negative 2. 2 times 2 is 4 over 4 minus 1/4. So I'm starting at negative 2 and going one more negative, and I'll get to negative 3/4. So negative 1/2 minus 1/4 is negative 3/4. Alright, when adding and subtracting mixed numbered fractions, we follow similar steps. We reduce if we can, we then convert into improper fractions, find the least common denominator, then we add or subtract, and then convert back into mixed number fractions if possible. And then we reduce. So I'm noticing in these fractions we cannot reduce, so I'm going to turn them into improper fractions. You do that by multiplying the whole number by the denominator and then adding the numerator. So 3 times 3 is 9, plus 1 is 10, so that's 10/3. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5/2. Now I'm going to find a least common denominator, which the least common multiple of 3 and 2 is 6, so I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. I'm going to multiply this fraction by 3 over 3 in order to get that common denominator of 6. So 2 times 10 is 20 over 6, and 5 times 3 is 15 over 6. I then add those and I get 35 over 6. Now turning that back into a mixed number, I know that 35 goes into 6 5 times. 5 times 6 is 30, so there's 5 left over, so 5 and 5, 6. Looking at number 2, we'll do it in red. Again, neither of these can reduce, so I'm going to turn them into improper fractions. So 10 times 3 is 30, plus 2 is 32. Again, over 3, minus 7 times 2 is 14, plus 1 is 15 over 2. Again, they're denominators are 3 and 2, so it's going to be a common denominator of 6. So I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2, and this fraction by 3 over 3. 32 times 2 is 64 over 6, minus 15 times 3 is 45 over 6. Now, 64 minus 45 is 19 over 6. Turning that back into a mixed number, I know that 6 goes into 19 3 times, with 1 remaining, so that's 3 and 1/6. Alright, one last one. And let's take a look at this one. I'm going to turn this negative 4 and a half, into an improper fraction. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, so negative 9 over 2. And I'm going to do the same thing with this negative 2 3/5. So 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. So I have negative 13/5. Be careful with the negatives because you don't want to count the negatives when you are doing that. You're not going to do negative 4 times 2 is negative 8 plus 1, which would be negative 7. So do it with whole numbers first, or positive numbers, and then apply the negative afterwards. Okay, so I'm noticing the least common multiple of 2 and 5 is 10, so I'm going to multiply this fraction by 5 over 5, and I'm going to multiply this fraction by 2 over 2. I know negative 9 times 5 is negative 45 tenths, and I know that 13 times 2 is 26 tenths. So minus negative 26 over 10. Now I know that subtracting a negative, we do keep, change, opposite, and that's going to become negative 45 plus positive 26. And negative 45 plus 26 is negative 19. So we get negative 19 over 10. I know that 10 goes into 19 one time, so that's negative 1, and there's 9 left over, so 9 tenths. All right, let me know if you have any questions. Have a wonderful day.